What's up guys, it's Julian, and today I'm going to be showing you how a #1 tech house track is made. We're going to be going through everything you need to focus on to make your track really powerful and effective and really work. So as usual, you can get the full project file, samples, MIDI, presets, this entire template that you just heard in the intro is available at the top of the description on my Bandcamp for just $5. If you guys enjoy these videos and you want to learn how to make the best possible music you can make, definitely go grab that. You get all the stuff you need to make a really high quality track. And like I said, it really helps support me as well. Everything you see here is available right at the top of the description. So go grab that, guys. And yeah, let's dive into the video. So we're at 126 BPM. And the first thing we have going on here is the low end. So as you can hear, the bass and the kick are really fat sounding, and that's one of the biggest things about making a track in the style is that you really need to nail the kick and the bass. If these aren't working, this whole thing is gonna fall apart. So you really gotta keep that in mind, and you wanna always start with your kick and bass. Like when you're starting a track, I always start with the kick, then I get the bass, and then you can kind of move up from there, because like if you listen to it on its own, and then the whole track, I mean, that's easily 50% of what you're hearing in the whole track. And it's just two elements, and it's not that hard to make them sound this way. So, the first thing we got going on here, I'll show you the bass. So right off the bat, a big part of making the bass really effective is having a simple bass line. If you have too many notes in your bass line, it's going to get really messy. And by too many notes, I mean both like too many notes in the scale, but also just having too many notes like happening, You notice like we give it a little bit of space. Like there's do-na, and then there's a little bit of space, and then you hit them with this. You don't just constantly just do-do-do. You want to have that little bit of space there. And the other thing that I think is really important is the call and response in this pattern. So if you notice, this is the call and this is the response. You get do-na-na, which is kind of like inviting this to be more busy, right? You get the do-na-na, do-na, do-na. Like this, if you just have do-na, do-na, do-na over and over and over again, that's not really going to be that effective. It's the fact that this is almost kind of like asking it, like, hey, like, what do you have to show me, And then you play that. So you really want these two to be talking to each other. It's not just like a simple groovy bass line. It's a simple groovy bass line where you have that movement and you have both elements talking to each other. So for the sound, this is made with 2 layers. So we have our sub bass, which is most of what you're hearing. Right? This is just 2 sine waves inside of operator, and the technique here is when you put the second operator an octave down, you get this like really deep and fat sound. Like if I put it at the same pitch as the first operator, so you have that same kind of like deepness to it, but you don't have the low end. This gives you the sound that you can hear and feel at once. The other thing here is you can see I've got the voices on 1, so it's monophonic, and then we have the glide turned on for those little like gliding notes there. And then on the second layer, so all this is, it's just a saw wave with a low pass on it, and then I'm high passing that after as well, because you don't actually want this for any low end. This is just in here to add some nice mid-range and kind of like some tone to the sound, something that you can actually like hear and not just feel. And I might even turn that down a little bit more, but it makes the bass fatter though, because it's adding that like mid-range and that low mid-range. And that's really the stuff that you hear. And if you don't have that, your bass can only be so fat. Like the fatness is in the low end, but really it's the way that the low end kind of gels with this frequency range. So you really want to have something like this. And then you'll notice the only effect that I have really on there is just a compressor, which is side chaining into the kicks. No compression happening, just a bit of side chaining to make it bounce up from the kick. But yeah, if you make solid bass patches, you really don't need that much processing. Like, that's something that I've learned over time, is that, like, you know, simpler is better. And if you can just make a bass that sounds really good just coming out of the synth, and you don't have to do all that extra stuff, you know, that's the best. Rather than, like, you know, I could make you, like, a chain here of, like, 10 or 15 effects and say, oh yeah, this is doing this and this is really important because it's doing this. But at the end of the day, it's just never going to sound as good as just these dry basses that just are really good patches to begin with. So then we have the kick. So this is two kicks layered together using my classic layering method. You can see we're using EQ3, and what we're doing is we have one for just the lows, like that, and then one for just the mids and highs. And then when you put them together, they fit really well because the EQ3 keeps it so that it's at the same place. And I recommend using EQ3 for this. I wouldn't try to do it with EQ8 because it can get a little bit more complicated and messy. But again, just two solid kicks playing side by side. You don't need a bunch of extra saturation or compression or anything. And then on the group of the low end stuff, so I like to keep these in a group. There's not really going to be any group processing. Again, you really don't need that, like I was saying before. But I like to keep them in a group for two reasons. One, it makes it easier to mix these kind of like as one thing, because we try to think of the low end as one thing on its own, made up of these two elements. But also because there's this high pass filter here in the break. And there. So it makes it easy to do those little transitions. And yeah, then we have our main hi-hat. And so the idea here is we have three layers. We have a kind of like a nice 909 hi-hat, a really bright one adding some high-end, and then one to give us a nice punchy right in the middle. And then when you put those all together, you get this one really fat punchy hi-hat. And this is something that you gotta keep in mind, you know, with this style. It's not just gonna be like one little 909 hi-hat. Like, you really need to layer these because you want these to hit equally as hard as the kick. You want it to be that like really hard smacking groove. And you only get that if you really layer these up and get that proper sound, because you could always try to like saturate one hi-hat and you might get this same kind of fatness, but it's always gonna be messier. This is the clean way to do it. And you'll see on the group we don't have any processing, it's all just dry. You'll notice also in the break I only use one of them, so it's a nice way to kind of make it hit harder in the drop. You save all three layers for the main like drop where you want it to hit, and then just use this one here. And yeah, then we have just like another little hi-hat. Just adding a little bit of extra groove in there. Then we have our clap snare, which same deal as the hi-hat. It's like, this is a sound you might think it's just going to be like one little layer, but actually if you put the clap on its own, you can see it doesn't quite hit hard enough. Like, it's good, but you need that you know, now your head is bobbing once we add the snare. So that's the secret there. You know, you really want to make this as fat as possible, and that's how you do that. Then we have like some extra percussion. I have these, which are kind of like these two elements that are grooving together. So these are some loops. These are actually from my Ultimate Drums collection. I'm going to put that on top of the description as well. But basically it's just these two little like groove loops. And I'll play that with like the main hi-hat and clap. So you can see having these two groove together, it creates a lot of movement. It just makes the overall groove of the track feel a lot more exciting. And it's a really good way to use loops in a way where it's still controlled and it's still fitting in with all the programmed percussion. But obviously, it just adds a lot of nice groove to the track, and it's also adding a bit of call and response in the drums. Then we have some bongos. You know, pretty standard stuff. They're just nice groovy bongos. One more little percussion that just comes in a few places, and also this little snare. These two are kind of together. And then that's it for the percussion. So with the percussion, you really want to make sure you have enough, but not too much, you know? Because too much is going to be not good. It's going to mess up your track. But not having enough is going to make your track really flat, I think. And yeah, then after that we have this house piano, which just plays in the break. So it's really simple. We're in the key of C minor. So here's the MIDI for this. You can see it's just... And then this chord here is actually the 4th. So that's going to be an F minor. Really simple. You know, just something nice and like groovy that's going to fit over top of everything. And not take up too much space. So this is just this classic M1 piano sample I've got in here. I made it this way so if you don't have the M1 VST you can still use it. Then we have the echo, just adding a bit of delay. I have this washout, which is basically just a bunch of reverb and a high pass filter. Being automated with a little bit of compression to bring it out. And then finally I just have a high pass filter on everything to cut out the low end of the whole sound. And then it does a little transition at the end there. Another thing we're doing at the transition there that's subtle but important is this low pass. You can see I have it disappearing with the low pass filter. And that's a really good way to just make this kind of fade out smoother. Because if you don't have that, it's going to be a little bit too bright. Very subtle, but little stuff like that that's going to make a big difference. And yeah, so then we have the vocals.
I hear voices.
So these are just 3 vocals that I put in the same key as each other, and I thought they sounded really good together. I think the key is you want like 2 or 3 little phrases like this. Preferably like 2 and then 1 is more of like an ad-lib like that. But yeah, so, you know, just kind of keeping it pretty simple. You know, you don't want to have too much vocals, but it's just enough that it's like catchy, and it kind of gives your track like a logo. Like it gives it something that people can really remember. And then the key is really just like, it's the combination of the melodic and the rhythmic. You want vocals that fit into the rhythm really well, like that's really catchy. And same deal with like, like that's really catchy, not just because of what is being sung, and not just the melody, but just the way that it's fitting into the rhythm of the track. Even this thing. So that's really what you're looking for, and you can quantize these as well. Like you can see, I've done a bit of quantization to make everything fit like perfectly, but yeah. And then, other than that, it's really simple on effects, right? Just a bit of echo and reverb, you know, maybe a high pass filter if you need it in some places. But this is something I want to talk about. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, how do you get those classic house vocals? Like, what are the processing secrets? What's the chain that you're going to use on it? Really though, like, if you have a good vocal sample, you know, that's the last stuff you think about. You really don't need to put that much effort into it, because it's like, these are just good vocals that have a good texture to them already. So it's better to spend your time looking for that than it is to spend your time trying to figure out the perfect vocal processing chain, because you really aren't going to need that much, as you can see, if you have good vocals. So then after that we have these 4 sounds, and these are kind of like the sounds that fill in the drop. So when you have a drop, you know, a lot of people think like tech house, it's just about making the repetitive, simple like drums and the bass line. But what it's actually about is how that stuff contrasts against this stuff, which is going to be kind of popping in and out of the track. Right, like having this stuff where it's something constantly happening, but it's not as like rapid fire as the drums and the percussion. And then again, it's this stuff and how this stuff grooves with the rapid fire stuff. And these are all pretty simple. So this first one here is just like 1 note, but the sound is made with operator. And this is a pretty simple FM sound. It's just a sine wave and a square wave And then the square wave is up to 4 on the chorus pitch, so you kind of get a more metallic sound with that. And then I have a low pass filter which has an envelope, as well as we're using the hard shaper in reverse. So here's without that. And then with it just adds a little bit more fatness to the sound. I have an LFO as well on the pitch, moving really, really fast. Which if I turn that off. So that's what gives it that kind of like alien, like warping texture. And I also have a pitch envelope to make it a little bit more punchy. We have a little bit of redux, a little bit of chorus, short reverb, and then just being sidechained to the cake and high passed. This one. So this one's pretty simple. What it actually is, it might look a little complicated, but it's actually simple. It's just basically a super saw. So you can see we have one form of this where it's this wavetable patch, and it's just a saw wave. And then I have the unison on the classic mode all the way up. And you can see I also have the glide there. That's what's creating that. You can see we just have like the quick pitch jump there. And then we also have this one, which is just a saw wave, which is an octave down from that. And that has no unison. And then you combine those, and you get this super fat sound. And then what we're doing after that is multi-band distortion. So it's basically just taking the sound and distorting the highs and mids and lows independently. And we're blending those as well. You can see it's all like very much blending with the dry wet knob there. So here's without that. And then with it just gives the sound a little bit more fatness and kind of makes it a bit more unique. I also have an auto pan on here to make it bounce off of the cake, and then a high pass filter. This one's just a simple chord stab. It's just playing C minor. It's just with analog. You can see we have a square wave and a saw wave. Low pass filter with an envelope. Amp envelope like that. And then just a bit of vibrato, reverb, and then a high pass. You know, this one's simple. It's just meant to be a nice, powerful chord stab. And you don't want to overthink sounds like this. You know, it's like, I can sit here and try to oversaturate this, overcompress it, get it all messed up, and then it won't even sound nearly as good as if you just let it kind of rock how it is coming out of the synth. And then this one is just a little clap that's just well placed. And it's really like how it fits into the groove that just makes it work so well at the end of every 2 bars. You know, and the placement of the notes. Really spend your time with the placement of these notes to make it like work the best. I think that's going to make a big difference. You can also see like how these two kind of create one groove. It's like do. And then we have just all the little background effects. So you can see like we have some snares. Your 909 snare with the volume building up. Little fill snare as well. We also have like then just a bit of noise. These are just some of mine that I've made. And then finally a crash, which hits about every 4 bars or so to kind of keep things moving. And yeah, so that's going to be it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. And let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get this full template, everything, the samples, MIDI, presets, and the project file are all available at the top of the description on my Bandcamp for just $5. Again, this really helps support me if you guys enjoyed these videos. Definitely go grab that because you're going to get an awesome template that you can make your best tracks with. Plus, it's going to help keep me going so I can keep bringing you guys more of these videos. And yeah, thank you so much for all the support, everybody. And I will see you tomorrow with another video.